And we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Leanne Ferguson. I am the Safe Routes to School Program Manager, and I'm going to share my screen really quickly and show you this is kind of our presenter's agenda, but I bolded kind of the major themes so that you could see what we're going to go through today. I'll start off with kind of introductions and orienting you to where you can kind of find all the information that people are going to be talking about. We will review the intergovernmental agreement, and Cece Gilbert will be doing that piece. We'll also review the guidelines. Tammy Wheel will be doing that piece. And we'll also be reviewing some of the educational pieces that you'll be doing as part of your construction grant. And from Alta Planning and Design, we'll be doing those pieces. And then at the very end, we'll have a time for Q&A. I think each of these pieces will take less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
And I'm gonna stop sharing and then see if I can mute everybody. Or if you're not muted, please mute yourself. Okay, I think we did it. Great, so I'm gonna let the other presenters go ahead and introduce themselves, and then I'll share my screen one more time and show folks where they can go to find the information that we're gonna be talking about. Also, if you have any questions, please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. You can put any questions in the chat, and please, you can also use the hand raising. I believe there's a hand raising function. You can use that, but honestly, I think the chat is easier with a group this size. And we'll get to all of your questions by the end. Before we get started, if you cannot find the chat function on your computer, go ahead and unmute yourself and let me know. I can give people more information about how to find it. All right, good. We've all been on Zoom before, it looks like. Great. So, Cece, can you do a quick introduction for yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cece Gilbert. I am with the statewide programs unit of ODOT. I am responsible for developing the templates that were used to further develop your grant agreement. I work with Tammy very closely, although she does most of the heavy lifting once your grant is fully executed.
And Tammy, can you go ahead and do an introduction?
Hi, I'm Tammy Weil. I work with all the day-to-day pieces of grant administration and work closely with all of you guys on reports and reimbursement requests and any other questions that might come up.
And finally, Katie, can you do an introduction for yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Steen. I'm a planner at Alta Planning and Design. We're a transportation planning consulting firm based in Portland and one of the technical service providers for the ODOT Routes to School program. I work on a lot of the Safe Routes to School planning, technical assistance. I've worked with many of you on your Safe Routes to School plans, as on evaluation and helping Leanne with some pieces for the construction grant. So it's great to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Great, thank you. So let's get started. I am going to share my screen again really quickly and show y'all how I find all of the documents that you're going to need as part of being a new grantee for Safe Routes to School. Okay, everybody see a Google screen? Okay, this is how I do it. I Google ODOT Safe Routes to School. It comes up at the very top. That's the easiest way to navigate ODOT's website, is to Google it. And this is a website that I share with our education program manager. It is not great, so any feedback is always appreciated, but just so y'all know, we know that this isn't great. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see project administration right there. And what this does is it is a quick link for all of you for all the forms that you're gonna need. It has guidelines for grantees, which Tammy will go over during this meeting. change request form if you need an update to your IGA, a reimbursement request form so that we can pay you, and a quarterly report form, which is something that you'll be filling out quarterly to update us on your projects. So that's where all of those can be found kind of in the quickest way that I know how to do it. All right, so again, welcome everybody, and thank you for all submitting an application and being part of the Safe Routes to School program. I'm really appreciative of all the work that you're doing on the ground. The program wouldn't mean anything if you all weren't here to apply and to build and to really help address those barriers to students walking and biking to school. So I want you all to feel very appreciated. I'm very appreciative of all of you. Thank you for doing all the hard work to get to this point and to continue to do all the hard work to get the project built on the ground. And with that, I will pass it off to Cece, who's going to give us some, highlight the most important aspects of your agreement.
Good morning and congratulations, everyone. It's very exciting that you've received your Safe Routes to School project. So that's great. At this time, you may or may not have an executed agreement, and that's fine. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights of your grant agreement. So first of all, this is a binding document. So if you hear something or read something that's outside or different than what is in your agreement, this document will actually prevail over anything else. So just fair warning there. Just a couple of things I want to highlight about this grant agreement that may be different than other grant agreements that you have with ODOT or other agencies. First of all, the program is a reimbursement program. And what that means is that you pay your invoices and bills first, and then you seek reimbursement from ODOT, and we will reimburse you for those costs. Tammy will go over what eligible costs are a little later on, but that's pretty important and a little bit different than most grant agreements, where typically they'll just sort of throw the money over the fence and you go forth and do good things. This is a little bit different in the fact that that you have to pay your vendors and contractors first. Number 5, page 5 of your grant, there it'll show what percentage of your reimbursement amount will be reimbursed. So if it, for example, if ODOT is going to pay 40% of the reimbursement amount, then if you send us an invoice for $100, we'll reimburse you for $40. Hope that makes sense, and Tammy will go into further detail, but just be aware that on page 5, it is item number 5. It talks about the percentage that we will reimburse you. Something to keep in mind too is that we have a record retention of 6 years. So that includes not only your documentation, but any vendors, consultants, contractors that you may have. They also have to keep documentation for 6 years. As well as you will need to follow the ODOT procurement code. And if you are self-performing any of the work, you'll need to seek approval from ODOT prior to doing so. I'm moving on to Exhibit B, where there's a lot more detailed information. One thing that I would like to point out is the ADA requirements. So if the ADA is on your system, in other words, it doesn't touch or abut ODOT system, we have provided some documentation in your grant agreement that you are free to use. Otherwise, you can use whatever your agency typically uses. If, however, your work will trigger work on ODOT system, you will need to get a permit from ODOT, and you will have to follow the guidelines. Just construction. So the question is, I don't know if everybody saw the question. Do you need ODOT approval to self-perform design or just construction? Just construction. Exhibit B also talks about doing any work on the right-of-way. Again, you'll need to get a permit to perform work there. And if you have a website that shows anything about the Safe Routes to School project, you'll need to let us know what that website link is, and so that we can include that on our website as well. We'll also need pictures, photographs, now that you've got your grant agreement. We'll want to see pictures currently as the project is now. And then once it's completed, we'll also want to see pictures once everything's done. Exhibit C talks about insurance requirements for your contractors, consultants, and vendors. So just be aware that we do require that if they're doing work on our system, that they will be required to include a certain insurance amounts. That's really it. It's not super heavy, I don't think, not a whole lot of obligations. But if you have any questions, you can always contact me or contact Tammy, and we'll try to help you work through the agreement.
Great, we're gonna keep rolling. We will have questions at the end, but we did get one. The best way to get you lots of big photos. Do we have the best way to send us big photos?
Tammy, have we just typically gotten those in a PDF, or how have we gotten those?
We've gotten them every way that can possibly be sent. If you have a lot of them and they're big, the last one gave us a link to their own, I don't know if it's SharePoint or it was an outside, Google Docs is where they put them. And I'm in the process of downloading them. So whatever works best for you to get them to us. We don't have to have lots and lots of photos. We do need before photos and after photos, and some of the projects I know have a lot of different pieces to them. So they do require more photos than some of them.
Dan also says if we put them on a web page for the project, does that work? If you send us the link to the web page, we can steal them.
Yeah.
We have like a file folder in our filing system as well. So I think we could get them off of your website.
Yes.
All right. Great. So let's move on for Tammy. And we do have questions at the end. Also, we have a great question of which of you should we send the link to? And basically, we have a great mailbox called the Safe Routes to School Program Mailbox. And Tammy is wonderfully in charge of that mailbox. I also get all of those emails. So the best way to send us anything about your project is to go straight to the Safe Routes to School mailbox. I can type it into the chat, but it is SRTS program mailbox at odot.state.or.us. And it's on all of the forms that are on that website that I first saw you. Is where you send all of those forms, is to the Safe Routes to School program mailbox. So anything that we ask from you here and any questions that you have can all just go to that mailbox.
And it's also throughout your grant agreement as well.
All right, Tammy, take it away.
Okay. Leanne showed you how to get to the different reports and to the guidelines document. The guidelines document does also go over all of these things that I'm going to go over regarding the progress reports, reimbursement requests, and change orders. So for progress reports, they are due, their quarterly reports are due by the first Wednesday of each quarter. The quarters are March, June, September, and December. Your first one is due to us whatever is the first quarter after your execution of your agreement is when we would like to see the first one. We don't send out reminders unless you haven't submitted the report, and then you'll get an email from me saying it was due on this day, so please submit it. On the report itself, sorry, that's my cat Buster, who likes to participate in all the meetings that I'm in. On the report itself, it currently asks for only the beginning and ending milestones. we would like to see an update on all of the milestones that you outlined in your grant application. Gives us a good idea of how your project is progressing as you send us the reports each quarter. And then a little bit of clarification on this report. There's an estimated due date and an anticipated completion date. The estimated due date is the date that was outlined in your grant agreement or on your application. The anticipated completion date may be the same or it may be different. It could be different by a month or longer. If it's going to be more than 90 days past, if the first or last milestone will be more than 90 days past what's outlined in your grant agreement, then you'll need to submit a request for change order. The quarterly report is pretty cool. It is on a website that's called Cognito. So it does a lot of it's very intuitive. I like the way that it works. It has a spot for only one milestone, but lets you add as many as you need to. So you don't have to worry about if there's enough spaces for them. And then we ask for a brief status update at the end of the report as to how your project is going. For reimbursements, eligible expenses are any capital expenditures that are reasonable, necessary, and directly related to the project and project delivery. They do not include things like, sorry, I thought I had this up on my screen. They don't include things like personal services, lease payments, maintenance agreements, items like that. They do include things like land acquisition, capital construction costs, design and engineering, professional services. When in doubt, you can always ask and we can tell you if they're eligible or not. Please send us an email or a phone call. As far as the reimbursement request form, it's pretty self-explanatory also, except, well, I think it's self-explanatory, but one thing to keep in mind is you don't sign the form. I've had several submitted just in the last couple of weeks where the form was signed, but all the signature blocks at the bottom are for ODOT signatures, so don't sign that. When you submit your reimbursement request, we need our form, which is on our website. And then we need the backup documentation for everything you're wanting to be reimbursed for. For the first couple of reimbursement requests, we will want proof of payment so we can see that you paid your vendors before you requested reimbursement from us. And then the backup documentation is invoices, receipts, anything that you paid off of, and it should show service dates like the start date and end date. If it's a receipt, it'll just have a date. Like if it's a receipt for a meal, it'll have one date. But if it's an invoice, maybe for design services, a lot of times the invoices only have a through date, but we really need a beginning date and ending date so we can ensure that the services were not performed before the grant agreement was executed. Proof of payment is canceled checks or something from your bank showing the funds left your bank account. Sometimes that is you've logged in yourself and you've sent us a snip of what we can see in your bank account that the funds left. Sometimes it's something else that your bank provides for you. After the first couple, we won't ask for those anymore. We know it's a pain to get them, but we do need them at the beginning. On the reimbursement request form, if you have 20 invoices that you're asking for a reimbursement for, the form only has room for 3. So say, see attached, and please send us a summary sheet to go with it so we know what invoices we're looking for. When you send in a request for reimbursement, you'll hear back from me within a day or two saying I've received it and we're reviewing it. And then you'll also get another email once it's been approved and is submitted for payment. And then payment comes normally within 45 days of our approval and submission. It takes a while because there's a lot of people's hands involved. It goes from place to place to get processed throughout ODOT. I think that's kind of it for the reimbursements. You must begin spending your money within 2 years of your execution date. And you'll hear from us then if we haven't received anything yet. Change orders, the request for change order, it's only necessary if your first or last milestone is going to be more than 90 days beyond the date outlined in your grant agreement. And we will review it. I'll let you know when it's been approved and when the amendment process has started, and then you'll receive a copy of the amendment for your signatures, and then it'll be sent back to us for ODOT signatures, and then we will send you the executed copy once it's done. I think that's it. In the guidelines, please review the guidelines document, and if there's anything in there that doesn't make sense, let us know. We want to keep it, we want it all to make sense, and we want you to be able to understand it. It makes sense to me, but I've been working with this stuff for a while and it's new to all of you guys. So please do let us know if anything in there doesn't make sense. And I think that's it for my part.
Great. We did have one question that CC answered in the chat, which is, do we do quarterly reports when the project hasn't started yet? For example, if we're starting in fiscal year 2022. And the answer is yes. Go ahead and send us a quarterly report saying we haven't started yet. What that does is it tells us that it's still on your radar. These are sometimes small but mighty projects, but sometimes they can fall through the cracks. And what we really don't want to have happen is that someone just forgets to spend money in the first 2 years and then we have to take the grant back. Like, that's not, we want to make sure that it's on your radar. So thank you for filling out those quarterly reports, even if you haven't started yet. Any other questions for Tammy? We're ahead of schedule, so we could take a couple from Tammy's information. Also, all that information is located in the guidelines, that everything that Tammy said, and we do appreciate feedback on that document if it doesn't make sense.
One other thing I forgot, Leanne, the reimbursement request form, it has a cover page that outlines everything I said also. It tells you everything you need to know, what you need to send, and how to process it.
Great. A couple more things about just like projects delivery is in each ODOT region, there is an active transportation liaison, and that is a person that hopefully you know that active transportation liaison in your region. And that's a person that I will rely on if there's any problems with the grant. I will brainstorm with them on ways to like help you through the problem. They are located closer to you, so they might be able to come out and help in some way. Also, they're the ones who will be doing the walkthrough of your project. When your project is complete, we will do a walkthrough, and the active transportation liaison in your region is the one who will be doing that with you. And just to make sure that you built everything that was written down in your scope of work in your IGA. In general, you should not have a lot of interaction with a local agency liaison, which is another ODOT staffer in the regions, or any sort of project manager, unless you are building on ODOT right-of-way. If you are building on ODOT right-of-way, you will probably have, or you will have some interaction with a project lead or a local agency liaison in some way to make sure that the work that you're building on ODOT right-of-way meets all of the requirements. And the first step to all of that is heading to the permit office. All right, I don't see any more questions in the chat. We're going to move along to Katie, but feel free to keep adding questions in the chat as soon as they pop into your head.
Great, thanks, Leanne. Adjust my windows here.
So Katie is again from Alta Planning and Design, and she's going to talk a little bit about the educational requirement that we have as part of building the construction grants. And the reason why we do this is because we know through lots of studies done in the United States and around the world that when you build something, that's great. if you do some outreach around it, you could more than double the impact that you have. So outreach is like a really small but key piece to making sure that that the wonderful things that you're building get used in a way that's really safe and people see the benefit in that. So Alta has come up with some resources, very simple resources to help you all meet the expectation that you will be doing some outreach around this project. If you're already doing outreach in your area around safe routes to school, this doesn't need to be added on top of that. But if you're not really doing any outreach around safe routes to school in your area, at minimum, we think the things that would have the most impact are things like a press release, an article in the school newsletter, and if kids are going to school, in-person school, some sort of backpack mail around this new safety feature, how to walk and bike safely, some of those materials, and Alta's creating templates for you. So take it away, Katie.
Yeah, thanks. And I believe we had some specific requests for this in the last round of construction grants. Yeah, some of the grantees requested templates to be able to really make the connection between these exciting projects and safe routes to school, and publicize that to the media as well as to the general public and to students and families at the nearby schools. And so we are working on a communication toolkit to provide templates to make this really easy. It's going to include a newsletter, project announcement copy, just a place to describe what the project's going to be and make the connection between the project and safe routes to school. That'll be translated into at least English and Spanish, and we have the resources to translate into further languages as needed. And then a safety tips flyer, that's going to be a handout, very graphic, graphically designed, that'll have walking, biking, and driving tips, again in English and Spanish. And then a press release, just getting all the details out to local media. And then safety messages by month. That'll just be kind of fun ways to highlight safe travel and get students excited to walk and bike that could go out on social media or through a newsletter that could be the grantees, like roadway jurisdictions, or potentially shared with the school district for them to use. And those also will be available in English and Spanish. And then in the toolkit, we'll also have talking points to communicate about safe routes to school to different audiences, what elected officials might be interested in knowing, what school staff might care about, and then highlighting the benefits to parents and family members. Do you guys see is there a question?
Not yet. There have been some of that go back to the other presentations. So we'll keep address those after you're done.
Great. And then I just have one other piece to mention. And then, yeah, happy to answer questions about either of these. We will also be doing some evaluation case studies. This involves baseline and after studies to communicate and evaluate the impacts of safe routes to school grants and the planning assistance work that we do. So that's the construction grants, education grant, and then the project identification program. And going to happen this spring due to COVID, but typically we would work with grantees to collect parent surveys and student travel tallies, and essentially be in touch this spring or summer if your program is selected to participate in a case study. We're not going to do all of the grants. It'll sort of depend on a variety of factors. And this is just like a kind of a teaser. Don't be surprised if we contact you at a later date to talk more about this. And so I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Katie. A little bit more of the history of the case studies is that for the first round, we actually had funding to do a case study at all of our projects. And that was great. We got to do before studies, and we'll start working on after studies on those that are completed, but we don't have enough money to do all of the projects this round. So we'll just make a couple of selections, and Alta really steps in to help with like the data collection and really creates a really good before case study that is not only helpful for ODOT, but it's also helpful for you and your community, that you'll have a case study for that project. But again, we can't do it for everybody, so we'll be narrowing that list down and reaching out in the next couple of months.
And Leanne, I believe, is there an example of that posted? Baseline report? I
don't know if I have a baseline report. I think I do have a baseline report posted. I'll have to take a look for that and see if we've got an example posted online. While I'm doing that, Cece or Tammy, would you all mind reading out loud some of the questions and answers that have popped up in the chat? You might.
Yes, I can do it.
Oh, thank you so much, Tammy. I appreciate it.
Sorry, I didn't want to talk over Cece if she had a burning desire to do it. Let's see. Someone asked where the guidelines documents are. They're on the website where Leanne showed us at the beginning, Google ODOT SRT. For the key milestone of project completion, does that represent final completion of construction? Pretty much, it's the construction of your project is outlined in the scope of work in your grant agreement, which is usually at the end of construction. We will be putting an RFQ to hire an engineer to design our project, as we don't have one on staff. Is there a checklist of items we would need to include in a contract for this to be eligible for reimbursement? Item number 8 in your grant agreement talks about the recipient sub-agreements and procurements, so look there. Does the executed agreement represent the official notice to proceed and mean that the grant funding is eligible for reimbursements? The email we send out with your executed agreement is your notice to proceed, and the execution date is the date you can begin spending money. That was all the questions, I think.
Great, thank you so much. I did a little poking around. I have not posted any baseline studies, so if you would like an example of a baseline study, please feel free to email the Safe Routes to School program mailbox, and I will get you an example of what that baseline study looks like. So we have another 15 minutes or so on the calendar invitation. Happy to answer any additional questions. If you've got any more, please pop them in the chat. You can also feel free to start heading off to take a break before your next meeting if you've got back-to-backs today. We've presented all the information that we wanted to highlight. So thank you for your participation in this program. We did have a question from Betsy, which is, please clarify this baseline study. When is that due? Actually, not everyone will do a baseline study. It's not something that's due. It's an evaluation that we'll do on specific projects, and we haven't figured out which of those projects we can do a baseline study on yet. So we'll be reaching out to folks in the next several months if your project is selected for a baseline study, and it shouldn't be a heavy lift on your end. We have Alta on board to help gather preliminary information to help sort of pull that baseline study together.
There was another question, Leanne. If we're providing local cash match for work done within the previous 5 years, how is that reported? If it's previous work, that was taken care of in the creation of your grant agreement, and it directly affects the amount of the reimbursement percentage that you will receive. So you don't need to do anything once the agreement is executed. It was taken care of ahead of time, and we've asked for that information already, and those who had prior expenditures to be their match.
And another one from Dan, if we are able to save money on the project, can we include an ALT to extend the scope farther, sidewalks into the community? So that would be a request. What you would fill out is a request for change order form, and let us know that you'd like to change your scope. So basically the bottom line is that scope would need to be updated in order for you to do additional work. I'm not opposed to that idea. So if you save money and you want to spend that additional money on something that will continue to improve the safety of students on that project, I would be very open to seeing your ideas, but you'll have to go through that request for change order process and fill out that form, and it'll come to me to review, and then you would need a contract, a grant amendment, IGA amendment, in order to make that official. I like the way you're thinking. And another one from Andrew, can you confirm that internal project management time to manage the project is eligible for reimbursement? If so, does ODOT require a standard billing rate? Our rates include salary plus benefits plus overhead. Cece, who can speak the most eloquently to this question? Is it anyone besides me?
Tammy can.
I'm not very eloquent ever, but the answer is yes, it is eligible. I don't know about a standard billing rate, but the ones that I've seen do include salary, benefit, overhead. So you need to provide us something that shows the breakdown of the costs when you submit the request.
And I do know that grant funds can't be used to like do things like keep the lights on. So we will probably scrutinize that overhead rate. Benefits are great, like where we can absolutely pay for benefits, but like in that comment where it says plus overhead, we probably want some good backup for what that plus overhead is, so that we can determine if we can pay that full amount or not. Great question. From Betsy, is your toolkit available yet? If so, where can we access it?
It is not quite ready. It should be ready sort of mid-February, a couple weeks. And will just be posted on the same grantee resources spot on the website.
We can post it there, and we can send out an email letting everybody know that it's ready. I'm very glad you're excited about it. And also, if you have any questions, please feel free to send it to that Safe Routes to School program mailbox. So if you haven't seen something in a couple of weeks and it pops into your head, go ahead and you can absolutely send us an email to that inbox. Well, feel free to, I'm here for another couple of minutes, so feel free to keep adding questions into the comments, questions into the chat for folks that are taking off. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate your time and energy on this project, and are looking forward to seeing them built. I don't get to go out to see many of them, but I hope to come out and see a couple of yours when they're done.
Thanks, Leanne. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you. Good to see you, Shane. We've got one more from Jonathan. What kind of review does ODOT have for consultant design contracts? Does ODOT review the environmental section only? Anybody know that one? Cece knows it. Can you answer it, Cece?
Yeah, I did. I did put it in the chat.
Got
But we don't review the design and we don't look at the environmental. That's up to the local agency.
Great. All unless you're building on ODOT right-of-way. If you're building on ODOT right-of-way, different set of requirements. But if you're building on your own right-of-way, we do not need to review design or the environmental. I had a specific question from Janelle. She said to follow up about the previous question about prior expenditure. And she has a specific question about your grant, Janelle. So is that why the Mary Eyre project, which we are matching 50%, has a 60% reimbursement rate in the IGA? That's not actually, that's a little more complicated than just prior expenditure. So just to make it simpler on our end, we just put in the IGA what is required. If you are going to overmatch, we didn't put that in the IGA. And the reason for that was because we would have to do a contract amendment if for some reason you couldn't overmatch anymore. And that was an extra step, an extra amount of paperwork that we thought was unnecessary. So in the IGAs, we just put if there was a requirement that you had to provide a certain amount of match, that's where we capped it. And if you overmatch, great, but you don't have to. We don't need to do a contract amendment. So you'll have a little bit of flexibility in there if you no longer can overmatch. Does that make sense? Okay. Great. And we have some excitement about Safe Routes to School. I'm also very excited that you're getting your projects. Thanks for all your hard work. Looks like that's been a long-standing need. It's fun to see it come. It's really nice to like engage people in building projects that they've needed since they were children. Like, thank you for all of your work. AJ, we're excited to work with you. Send any questions you have to the Safe Routes to School program mailbox. We'll be happy to help you along the way. If anybody's who's still on the line wants to unmute yourself and ask a question, feel free to. Like, we were really using the chat because there were so many people. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, but I'll still hang out for another 5 minutes.